What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Elevate Your Grind. And for the last time, I am your host, Todd Rosales. That's right, folks. This will be my last episode of Elevate Your Grind. But EYG will live on. It's still going to be a great show. It's still going to connect you with the best and brightest in the industry. So make sure you follow it. And I want to congratulate the new hosts, Oswaldo Graziani and Dan Sparks. I know you guys are going to crush it as you carry this show forward into the future. It's been an amazing 4 years. I hope you've learned something. I've certainly learned a ton in a completely different place than where I started this show. I've met so many great friends through this place, so many business contacts. I can't thank you all enough for following this journey. And it's been a great one, but we've got one last ride for you. And this is one of my favorite interviews I've done. I got to sit down with the founder and CEO of Connected Cannabis, Caleb Counrs. This dude is so knowledgeable, so smart. The way that he's building his company, the care that they put into the product, the quality. It reminds me of those old business war stories that I talk about from time to time on this show, which is a great podcast if you have time, after you finish watching all of our episodes. We talk about so much and how he's expanding and the deals he's done in Florida and Arizona and going all the way back to the beginning of Connected, being the original licensing partner with Burner and Cookies. There's so much to talk about. And the problem is Caleb is just such an easy guy to talk to that you end up just kind of talking like friends. And I forgot I was interviewing him. It was more like we were hanging out. So I hope you learned something from this. As far as last episodes go, this is a great way to end it. I'm not going anywhere, folks. This is not goodbye. It's see you real soon. Enjoy Caleb's episode. Yeah, dude. So it was crazy. I saw Ted got tapped by Peacock to promote the show Ted. That is really freaking cool that like mainstream brands are reaching out to you guys.
Yeah, I mean that's I just saw that actually myself. I think it was last night, and it's incredible. It's such a good sign for not only the work that we're doing, but for the industry and where I think we're likely headed.
It was funny. So getting back into that, I scrolling through Instagram and I saw it, and it's funny. I'm like, that makes sense. And I looked and I realized that Ted has 65,000 followers on Instagram, which I'm imagining 64,999 of them are giant stoners. So it makes a ton of sense, right? Like, why not tap a guy like him? And it's funny. I remember you having these conversations talking about how Alien Labs seems so much bigger than they were with their social media, and that you weren't ready to be, a face for the company yet. So I went to your Instagram, which phenomenal handle. I'm like, yep, Caleb hasn't started building yet.
It's just not natural for me to get in front of the camera. Like that's just like not
Yeah.
a thing for me. I'm starting to do more on the connected side, but I've never really wanted like that kind of attention. Although I realize it's beneficial for the brand, it just doesn't come natural. So it's like something I have to put effort into and work at. And I'm not afraid of it, but it's just like you get a little stage fright almost. It's
Dude,
funny.
it's funny because I feel the same way. And obviously, with me having a podcast, everyone's like, yeah, right. You love the attention. And it's like, I know this is hard to explain. And I feel like you feel the same way, where it's, I don't personally want the attention, but I want to bring the attention to my art or the thing that I'm doing. So I
Yeah.
understand that it has to be me. Like, I don't, if this show got big and nobody knew my name, they just knew me as the guy who interviewed all the cool people, I'd be perfectly okay with that. I would actually
Right.
prefer some sort of anonymity with it. Obviously, it's very hard to do considering I'm half of the conversation, but like, I feel like you feel the same way. You're like, I want Connected to be famous. I want everyone to know Connected. I don't care if they know Caleb, but I guess it makes sense that if they know Caleb, it pushes Connected.
Yeah, and I think there's something unique about the cannabis industry in that, it's relatively new to the mainstream, right? For those of us that have been smoking and grinding and
Oh yeah.
and doing whatever we need to do for years, it's just like it comes second nature. But there are so many new entrants into the market, both on the business side and on the consumer side. And so there's a huge need for the consumer to, and in our partners, right, the dispensary level, and or our cultivation partners, the MSO partners in other states, like they kind of got to know what we're about and why we're unique and where we come from. And that kind of, I mean, I wish it could start another way, but it starts with the people that do the work.
Yeah,
It's like,
man.
it's the people that have the crazy stories. It's the people that have been in fucked up situations. It's the people that have thrown themselves on the tracks, to to win in this game. And we have a unique story to tell, and a lot of brands don't, and that's okay. They could tell a different story, but like when an industry's new and a consumer need is faced, when companies have limited marketing avenues and there's so much money that got pumped into so many different brands and companies, there's just a new brand every day, there's a
Yeah.
new dispensary every day, there's a new everything, and the consumer can't sort through it. So I care about the brands. Like I care about a little bit about the story of the brands that I pay attention to, or the bands that I patronize. So um it's kind of like my responsibility. So I gotta fucking put my big boy pants on and get out there and put my face out there a little bit more.
But that's the thing, like you, Ted, like there's this group of you guys that are coming out of California now that did the right thing by building your business brick by brick in California, that have now seen the licensing game and have figured out how to do it the right way across the country. Like, I've told you in the past, I helped launch the brand Heisman, and like we had a message and we were trying to be very transparent. Like, hey, we're not cultivating the weed, we're cultivating the experience for you. And I thought that was more honest approach to it. But like realistically, our game was grow as big as you can, as fast as you can, to collect that royalty to sustain the business. And there are a lot of people that are doing that asset light business model, that thing that can do it better. I think if there's no transparency in the fact that you're asset light, that is a huge strike against you, because it's unauthentic, right? Like if you're saying I'm a tastemaker, or I'm a fan, or I'm a something, and I'm curating this experience to you, there's truth to that. And like, hey, I just love, like, there's so much I want to talk to you about here. Like, I know you talked about tastemakers and having Ted. Like, I am not a huge tastemaker, but I know the weed I like. And if I can curate an experience for someone to say, this is what I love, if you like things similar to me, you're going to love it too. But what you guys did is you honed your craft. I look at you, and I think I had this conversation with Ted and David from Preferred, where to me, and I watch a ton of stand up, you guys are these artists that are honing your craft over and over again. And you're this group of people that you don't need to be filthy stinking rich. I mean, I'm sure that's going to be a nice bonus at one point, but if you could just pay your bills and do what you do every day, I feel like you guys would still wake up and be happy as shit. And as someone who's a fan of the industry, I watch this podcast, Business Wars, all the time. Talks about classic business wars, Ford's versus Chevy, General Mills versus Post cereals. And it's these founder led companies, and hearing these stories, it's such an exciting time to see it unfold. Like the conversation that you had with Elliot on his podcast, two founders in the conversation, talk about the early days. I think we're at such a cool point in time where I love the fact that you're coming out, you are sharing your story, and we're getting to hear it, because it is the guys like you that don't want to be on camera that do have the best stories. So I know there's not really questions there, but like with that where do you see success in the industry coming from? Do you think it's going to continue to come from these founder led brands that are just so passionate and are transparent in what they're doing, and it's just these folks like yourself that would do it whether they made a lot of money or not?
So look, I think there's got to be, for the vast majority. I'm going to jump to the end of your question about whether there's money or not. Like I'm not going to pretend for 1 second that I didn't get into this business. I got into it because I love the product and I love the experience and I love being surrounded with it. But I also wanted to make good money, right? And so there has to be a pot of gold or a pot of something. Let's put it that way. It doesn't have to be
Yep.
gold. There's got to be a pot of something at the end of this rainbow, because we're constantly getting kicked in the fucking dick. Like that's
Yep.
the reality. Like it's just every day you come to work, there's a new challenge that is likely unique to cannabis. Like, I don't want to sit here and say that other businesses and other industries don't struggle and don't, have hurdles to overcome, but in cannabis, it is outsized. It's ridiculous. The promises that keep being made, the carrot that can never be grabbed, the legalization will be good, the taxes will go to the right things, and it's all fucked, and none of it is what anyone said it was ever going to
Oh,
be,
dude,
except for the things that we have made for ourselves. And I'm talking about the founders and the grinders and the industry folks. Like, none of it came to be what we said it was going to be, except for what the words that came out of our mouth. Anyone else, the politicians, the big business, the bankers, the fucking, whatever it is that came in, none of what they said happened. Only what we've said we're going to do and what we're about has come to fruition.
dude, you couldn't be more right, because think about just the basicness of a business, right? If you had never been an entrepreneur before, you had never done business before, and you go to someone, hey, I got this company I want to start, and the company's connected. What's the first step? Oh, well, go ahead to the bank, get yourself an account, and see about a loan. So you go over to Chase and you sit down. What type of business is it? Cannabis business. Get the fuck out, right? Like, just even getting a basic bank account, you got to know where to go. So the fact that when you say it's unique to cannabis, it couldn't be more true, because that's what made me fall in love with this industry, beyond the fact that I love weed. I love smoking weed. I love, touring cultivations and things like that. Is the adversity that you guys face every day and the way that you overcome it. And it is funny, right? Because to me, when I talk to guys like you and Ted and David, Brian down at the Flowery, you guys are the only people to me that live in the real world where you make decisions based on how it is today. Like, there are not a ton of decisions based on, well, if this happens, this happens, this happens, this is what's going to be great for us. I'm sure you're looking at that and like making sure you're prepared for it. But to me, it just seems like, hey, this is the world we live in. This is how we have to operate. And this is how we're going to make decisions. And it blows my mind that you have all these other companies that are just, they're more concerned of how it should be than how it is.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, of all of the years we've been in business, and we're coming up on our 15-year anniversary in February.
Congratulations,
That's
man.
a
That's
really
awesome.
big deal. We've never actually celebrated an anniversary in our company, because it's not about looking backwards, and it's not about looking forwards. It's about, there is a fucking big pile of shit that we got to take care of today. Every day is a new struggle, but it's like it the only times in our 15 years that we've gotten ourselves in trouble is thinking about what it should be like, or what someone, or paying attention to what someone else said it was going to happen, or what it's going to be like, instead of just sticking to what we have committed to since day one: growing the best possible weed, providing the best possible experience, breed, grow, sell the best cannabis in the world. That's our mission statement currently. And every time we take our eye off that wall, or have in the past, we find ourselves in trouble. We find ourselves crawling back to, okay, how did we get here? What are we about? Shake yourself off and get back to work, and stop fucking worrying about, what might come to be, because it's not time well spent, especially in this business.
No, I agree. So let's do the things you don't like doing. Let's look all the way back to the beginning. Uh, so you got involved in cannabis young, around 12, right? And obviously, being in California, it's a completely different I think it's a completely different culture and acceptance. Obviously, it's still very stigmatized and everything else, and it was illegal, and it still had the underground culture. But it's funny, as we were building our brand, I always looked at California and I go, they're too educated there. It's been part of their culture for a much longer time than it has anywhere else, at least a little bit more out in the open than, say, the East Coast or the South per se, right? So like, I look at a lot of these asset light brands, and I used to say, like, they're not able to compete in California because the consumer in California seems to be a lot more educated on cannabis than the East Coasters that are just happy that it's legal, and they know the best stuff that they were able to get at the time. So when you started getting involved with, when you were young, did you just fall into it? Was it something like, did you have friends that were selling it? Like, how did you get involved? Like, what made you start your relationship with cannabis?
It was the first interaction I had with it was this girl that I had a crush on, Mary Nelson. Mary Nelson's sister, I don't remember her name, but her sister was a few years older, and she was smoking weed, and we were like, we were interested in it. I mean, we knew enough about it that we wanted to tangle with it. And that was I'm pretty sure that was the first time I smoked weed. Her sister got a Crayola marker and wrapped tinfoil around it to make like a pipe, and as the like form, and then made this like tinfoil pipe. And we smoked brick weed full of seeds. I mean, pick the seeds out, but I mean, that shit is 50% seeds and stems if you're lucky, if you got a good batch, like hints of green, but mostly brown. And we smoked it, and I didn't get high, but I was determined to get high. And the second time I tried it, I did get high, but it was just like, it was taboo. You're not supposed to. My dad from a very early age was, discipline, discipline, discipline. Come to find out, he fucking grew. I found pictures of me later. I got a baby picture of me in a diaper with my hand holding onto a pot, and you can see these wispy leaves coming out of the plant that is in the pot, and it's a crazy sativa. I'm like, I haven't seen leaves like that ever in my experience, except like on the movies. But the stories come out after I get caught a few times. It's like he was growing fucking weed, well before I was born, and well into like when I was like 5, 6, having people over smoking out. They had the whole little smoke box, the roach clips that I saw that shit, and they just told me it was cigarettes. And so it was like embedded. It's embedded. My dad was selling weed, when I was really young. They quit and they put that stuff away, I think when I was like 6 or 7. And, so I didn't know, but when you're a kid, like, now I'm a father and I see they are absorbing shit. They might not understand what they are absorbing, but they are fucking absorbing everything. And there's no doubt in my mind that in some way, shape, or form, I was absorbing
Oh,
and enjoying, being around. I played in the garden all the time. We had a huge garden. That's where the plants were. So I've been interacting with cannabis since I was basically born without, knowing it. And then I took the leap when I was 12, and I've never gone back. I've the longest I've ever taken from smoking weed is 30 days. And it was fucking brutal. I actually just had to do another 30-day break with the house arrest. But before that, it hasn't been like 2 years
bro.
since I quit. I just love it.
Was there like so I was thinking about that, and I know, listen, we're gonna jump around from topic, we'll end up back in time again. But
Yeah.
with you taking a break, like, is there any case to be made like you're messing with my business? I'm in weed, like I have to taste this stuff. This is part of my job. You're going after my income, or based on what they did with COVID, do they just not give a shit?
Oh God, they definitely didn't care. The cool thing is, look, I could hate on the situation all day long, but I'll always look for the silver lining. Like, I could have been denied. I could have been accepted into the house arrest program, and I could have been denied the ability to go to work. They can do that. And they sent an officer to my work, and they're like, and they came to our office, which is our unlicensed premise. It's our only unlicensed premise, but there's like jars here. It's like we do a little, there's
Yeah.
not volume here, right? There's like no commercial cannabis here, but it's like where our R&D is done, because lo and behold, you can't consume cannabis on any licensed property. So it's like, where are you supposed to test your own fucking products? So we have an office. They came, checked it out, and they let me do it. So, but yeah, on the smoking, our breeding program has gotten so intense and so multi-layered and so complex. Like, we have not phenos. We don't even smoke the phenos, like the initial pheno hunt. Sometimes we'll pick like one or two. Our tester program, which is the selection that's made out of the 300 to 500 phenotypes that we see every 2 months, that tester program then pumps out between 30 and 60 strains a month, unique
Wow.
individual phenotypes that we have to sort through. And about anywhere from 20 to 30% of those end up being interesting. So yeah, for a whole month I wasn't able to be part of our team's R&D program. I wasn't able to be part of the selection process. Other than on eyes, ears. Luckily, having a killer fucking team that we built around us. tastemakers. Our sales manager Taylor, he's got an amazing palate. My partner from way back in the day, Luke, he's got an incredible palate, and then Ted, and then we get Carter from Carter's aromatherapy and CAD, and he comes in and he's got a whole different. So we've got a killer team, but yeah, it fucked with me. It fucked with us for a little bit, but
Dude.
it's just like, I didn't focus on any of that, right? It's just like I'll be honest with you. I'll tell you that the last 7 days I did get like a little kind of like depressed, like kind of started letting the weight of that was in the middle of the holidays. I started letting the weight of it, the stupidity of it, the just ridiculous it's just a joke. Like, I'm legal, I'm millions in taxes, but this little thing. And
It, yeah.
um, so that fucked with me, but it's in the past and it was a learning lesson. And it's a great story, dude. I mean, not many people can tell that good of a story.
No, your only offense for weed came when you were one of the biggest brands in the country 15 years in. Like, that's hilarious.
That's
I don't
so
want to call
fun.
them incompetent, but it's like you guys missed all the big stuff. You guys just got me going through the airport when I'm literally trying to do business. I'm bringing samples. I'm
Yeah.
bringing samples so people can try it. I'm not doing anything else. And that's the crazy part. They're like, we finally got them. Oh
Yeah, and
man.
if I would have sold for those were like the Frenchy pre-rolls, if I'd have sold those, like because that's the thing, I got charged with felony intent to distribute, right? I did the math because I bought a last minute ticket to Phoenix, and it's crazy, Sacramento to Phoenix, it could be like $600,
Yeah.
and this one was like five something, 550. And I did the math, and if I would have gotten top dollar for that case of Frenchies, I could have paid for 2/3 of my ticket. That's if I sold it at retail individually. No promo, dog. No promo. I
Oh
could have paid
man.
for 2/3 of I could have recovered 2/3. Like, is that what kind of crime is that? What do you think?
The
What do
worst drug dealer
you
ever.
It's crazy. Yeah, right. I'm in the fucking red. I'm in the
It's a
fucking
marketing
red of the
expense.
first deal.
Um, dude, it is nuts how they get you with that. So being, I like to have a fantasy of how you guys do the R&D. Did they send you videos and stuff and mess with you while they were testing and you were sitting at home?
No, so
Ah,
the folks at my company were super cool. So, I did break a rule on house arrest. You're not supposed to have more than two adults at your house. But we have our leadership team comes in town every third week of the
you have
month.
to
And so
face
we
the
did our
wall for
leadership
20 minutes a day. Uh,
we did the leadership dinner at my house. So we did it like they were super accommodating. We did have a holiday party here, and we have the R&D room, so most of the smoking was going back in there. But I was hella paranoid because I was in line for my weekly drug test, and one of the guys there, I don't know him, but he was like, "Yeah, dude, I've lost 30 days of good time," and he's like, I didn't even smoke." He's like, I was sitting in the room with people smoking, and he's like, I always thought that was bullshit, but secondhand smoke caused him to fail his drug test.
wow.
And he had 6 months for whatever he got charged with, 6 months, but he lost 30 days of good time for two drug tests, and it had barely gone up like nanograms, micro. I don't even know how it's measured on those things. And he was like, dude, I didn't even take a puff. So I was kind of freaked out at the holiday party. Everyone
I
was
can
like blowing
imagine,
away.
bro.
Like, but other than that, it was pretty chill. Everyone
Dude,
was super accommodating, and a couple of my out of town friends and or coworkers came to the house and did dinner and visited, and it was cool.
yeah, it's a nice way to reset. It just sucks when it's mandatory,
Yeah,
I'm
not
sure
on my
you
own terms. You
going,
start a business to do things on your own terms,
yeah,
right? I got into this business. I started a company to do things on my own terms, to dress how I want, to act how I want, to talk how I want, and and then lo and behold, in the process of conducting that business, I had that taken away from me. So it's insane.
going back to that silver lining though, when you started doing this, when you started selling weed, you never knew that this could be a true career that you could be proud of, post about on LinkedIn, sit in a podcast that, only my parents watch about. Like, you know what I mean? At some point when you were younger, it was, if I'm going to continue to do this, I'm going to have to look over my shoulder all the time. So it's almost like the universe coming around and said, hey, you got to lay with a lot. We're just going to make you sit home for a month. but you're going to get to continue to live your dream, right?
It
And
was like it was like a little tap, like, hey, just a reminder, this could have been way worse a few years ago.
I, the thing is, I get so happy. So one of my best friends, I don't know if you know him or not. He works. He's pretty high up at Jeter. His name's Anthony Ferrante. He's one of my best friends in the world. He came from here, moved to Colorado, kind of started, and then ended up in California. Jeter is actually founded by a couple guys we went to high school and college with. But he was my friend that was in the black market, and I just remember when he got into the legal industry, I kind of helped him get in, not with Jeter. He did that on his own, but I got him a little BS job prior to that. It was one of the happiest days for me because I looked at him and I'm like, because he was getting ready to start a family and everything. I'm like, how do you feel right now that you don't have to look over your shoulder anymore, that you get to continue to do what you love to do and you don't have to worry about that? And he goes, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And, I'd like to kind of ask that question to you as someone who started young with at that point no pathway to it being a real above board career. How do you feel the day that you got to start and do it the right way where it actually is like, oh my god, this is a real career path?
Well, so okay, so there's a couple of moments that kind of fall into that category, but uh, you know, I'll go back into it. But I jumped into it thinking everything was legitimate, and then I got it taken away again, and then had to, so I was selling in college, and after 9/11, my business really slowed down because I was getting all that Canadian weed. I still did some outdoor stuff after that, but just like once people were turned on to indoor weed, even though the Canadian stuff wasn't that good, it just was hard to turn them back onto that,
Yeah.
that shit growing in the middle of nowhere. The outdoor I was getting wasn't great, so I kind of wound down like naturally as I was ending my time at college, and then got my normal job, and then I did that for five. It was like I had decided, I'm like, well, it's time to be an adult, right? Like I'm switching off, I'm going into real estate. Got into and then real estate market crashed, and I opened my first dispensary, and I was like, wow, this is crazy, but it still was far from safe back then, and
Yeah.
so but I thought it was safer than it was, and got in 2000 February 2009, opened up shop, started my first grow in 2010, and it was only in 2011 during Obama's reelection campaign where they started that enforcement. And our landlord, we had just did $185,000 remodel on our space here in Sacramento, and 6 months after that remodel was complete, we got the letter from the feds. You're shut down, or we're taking the building, or you're sending everyone to jail, whatever the fuck that letter said. And so we moved around, and we hopped, and we bought another dispensary, and we opened this grow, and but then we found out we're under investigation by the DEA. And so there was like, oh, it's safe. I started this. I felt like $1,000,000. It's probably the highest I've ever felt in my life, was like the day we opened that shop. That was surreal. Partially because how shitty it was, and just like looking around and be like, I just opened my first business
Yeah.
with $15,000, a $65 fucking Craigslist, you know, uh, uh, cash register. I mean, this place was rickety, and I didn't care. We had like 5 strains on the shelf. I mean, it was worse than most people could even probably picture.
But
How
but
how
it wasn't like a backpack anymore. You had a store. Like
yeah.
you had a
And
place to
that
go every
felt, and
day.
we had a couch. We put a couch in the back, and that couch was fucking awesome. We sat back, and we'd, in between customers, because they weren't super frequent in the beginning, we'd go back there and just smoke weed and laugh and just be like, I had no pressure. I didn't like, I wasn't even worried, is this going to be a success or a failure? I'm
You're
like,
like, I'm working
the
right
weight
now.
of the world was off my shoulders. I was my own man. I had started my own thing. I had taken my own step, and it felt unbelievable. I can't even believe it. So, and I would encourage anyone who's listening, like, whether it's a weed business or a pizza shop or a fucking clothing store, like, if you have something you want to do and you're willing to put the work in, no matter the means, start it, get going, jump off that cliff, because that feeling, that high, I mean, I'll never feel that same thing again, you know, like I'll never feel that feeling. And it was one of the best feelings I can ever remember in my
I,
entire life.
I think you will feel it one more time. It will be bittersweet at some point when it comes time for Caleb to step away from Connected and you get that fuck you money and nobody can tell you what to do ever again. I feel like you'll maybe get it one more time, but it'll be a sad day because the baby will be moving out and going to college. So
That really, I've thought about that. You hit the nail on the head. I think about that, like whether it's fuck you money or whether it's however, like this phase of my life concludes, it will be like sending the kid off to college.
yeah.
It's just like I've got no more control over it. We can talk on the phone, we can do Zooms, like we can, you know, we can text each other, but it's not my, I can't make the decisions for him anymore. That
No, you don't.
the
Oh,
baby left the nest and he's gonna be go and become whatever he's gonna become, and I'll always be here for him, but you know, it's not my thing anymore.
it's
It's
gonna be
crazy.
It's gonna be crazy, man. And it's so cool. It's funny though, because like you talk about sitting on the couch and smoking in between customers and just having that elated feeling like I'm my own man. I get to do this on my own terms. It is funny because like I go to conferences and dinners and events, and a lot of what we do, we have meetings and we're smoking during them, and you're hanging out in this industry for some reason. You do get to try to exclusively work with people you like more than anything else. There's a lot of them because we're all kind of misfits that had other jobs and like, oh wait, we can make weed professional. Like there's a plenty of douchebags and people who shouldn't be here, but we don't need to focus on them. We'll talk about the good people. So like, she'll ask me what I'm doing. I'm like, oh, we're heading out to dinner, we're smoking, blah, blah, blah. She's like, are you working? I'm like, funny enough, yes. Yes, I am working. And I go, and just so you know, before you give me shit, I worked very, very hard to get paid to do this type of activity. Cause I remember maybe I was 26, 27, 28, 10 years ago. And like I started hearing like Gary Vee talk about doing what you love. And I started thinking, I'm like, well, what do I actually love? I'm like, well, I love bullshitting with my friends. I love hanging out. I love smoking weed, shooting the shit, and playing video games. And in my head, I go, that there's no, sorry, Gary, there's not really a way to make that a career until I found my way into the weed industry. And then I'm just like, okay, it's not exactly 100% where I am, but it is the most fun I've ever had working. Like I never had a bad day. I've had bad days, but it wasn't like never really a day where it's like, I don't want to fucking do this anymore. And it is nuts. And I can only imagine as someone who got to start their own company in the industry, someone who to me, it seems like you tend to work with people that you like to hang out with around how much fun that you guys must be having. Like, yes, there's work, there's hard stuff, there's negotiations, there's contracts, there's lawyers and all that. But on a day-to-day basis, how much fun you guys must be having doing this.
You know, make no mistake, we got 350 employees. We're running a corporation
A
here. It's
business.
like
Yeah.
it's, you know, you come to work but yeah, yes, like we don't have to take ourselves so seriously. We can tell jokes. We look around. We're surrounded by weed, but I'll tell you what, like I don't get to the grows as much as I'd like or as much as I should, but nothing matches that feeling of walking into a room week 8, week 9, just everything's just colored out, just fucking leaning, the hum of the big ass fans and the AC, and everything kind of goes silent. Like even if you're walking with someone, you can barely hear them, and you're just in it. You are in a weed spaceship that no one could have ever fucking pictured, what that would have looked like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, like how they look now, how our grows look, how most commercial grows look. And that feeling is irreplaceable. And that's incredible. And the fact that we are doing that and we're pumping that out. And when we get the opportunity to give tours or show people, sometimes we'll have like dispensaries that crush it for us and they'll come through and just watch people's eyes. It's like they're at fucking Disneyland for the first time. It's like, and then I get to absorb some of that energy, and it's incredible. So and the other thing it's like not about it's fun, but the other thing that's awesome about working here is the vast majority of people that work for Connected and Alien Labs do so for the passion.
Yeah.
Very few people are here for a job. They're here because they're part of something unique. and they're part of something cool, and they believe in what Ted and I have built and what we continue to do and say every day. And being around people that are passionate about what they're doing. I don't care what the business. I've seen passionate welders talk about their fucking weld in a way that like got me excited. It's like just passion, and it's disappearing in so many areas of our life.
Yeah.
Um, and it's important for us to hold on to it. And the fact that we get to hold on to it in a way and be part of it and surrounded by it in what puts food on our tables and is probably a third of our life. We're surrounded by that kind of passion. That type of thing is priceless. And so for that, we're incredibly lucky.
I couldn't agree with you more. People don't realize when passion shines through how different it is all the time. And I went to a lot of grows when we were building Heisman. I can tell, you know, the growers that really took pride in walking you through their grow and talking about everything and the way they talked about the plants, it came through so different. Like I would always be the guy who was right up on the grower. I ignored all the other executives and everybody else there because at the time I just didn't give a shit what they had to say because I wanted to hear the guy who's was in charge of the grow, what his opinion was. And it's funny, like I come from the world of technology prior to that, and there used to be some nerdy like CIOs and directors of ITs that had that same level of passion for their data centers. And it's funny to see that transition to walking through the grows now, especially as the grows become more and more, scientific focused with the controllers and the systems and everything that are in there. It's so much fun to do. It's something I don't think I'll ever get tired of. Um, Going back, I try to go back between the opportunity and how fun it is and everything else. But you early on kind of saw, and a lot of people did, like you were a seller of weed, if you will. You were a retailer. You took other people's weed and you sold it. At what point did you think like, if we want this to work, we've got to get into cultivation and then the R&D? Because today, Connected Alien Labs, you guys are known for that R&D. You're known for the new releases of strains. It's not like, hey, we've got these 2 or 3 or 5 and that's all you're ever going to get and we're just going to grow them really well, or we're getting it from somebody else. So where did you shift from the focus of selling weed to more of a vertical, if you will?
So it was very shortly after we opened the first shop, because we realized the consistency of weed on the shelves it was hard. I didn't have a bunch of contacts. I worked in very small circles. I worked with individuals that grew a couple of strains, and they were making as much money as they could. And so when we opened the shop, it was like, okay, you're just waiting for not only customers to come through the front door, but vendors. And some weeks it's slow, and some weeks they're the only people in the waiting room. But I didn't like that. I've never wanted to be in a position where I'm waiting for something to come to me. I'm going to figure out how to go get it. I'm going to figure out how to either build the relationships or do it myself. And we decided to figure out how to do it ourselves. And we got my mentor, Sean. He was the guy who was buying a bunch of weed, and he was the guy that I knew that grew the best weed and had the biggest balls in doing so. And so I was like, hey, dude, partner up, help us. And he helped us set up the first spot. And I was just like, look, we funded the whole thing. And so I was like, hey, half is going to be your way, and the other half I'm going to do R&D, because I was all up on the forums. And I was watching, people like Ivan in the early days, and I've forgotten some of the other the names that were on there, but I was watching what these guys were doing, and I was fucking glued to the computer. I was like, I have to try that. I'm going to try that. I'm going to do it. Going into a hydroponics store for me was like a kid in a candy store, especially once I had money.
You just
I remember
fell in
when
love with that stuff.
Yeah, I remember when I used to go in and I didn't have money, and I was just like mesmerized. Even just the meters, and I was like, oh my God, you can measure the water and look at these lights. I didn't even know what it all meant. And then when I went in and could afford to actually start putting things together, it was special. And so we dedicated that half of the facility to R&D. I tried everything that I had seen these guys do online. And ultimately, to this day, we're still basically doing a very similar version of what my mentor taught me. But sometimes you got to go through that, right? You got to learn, you got to figure out, you got to bump it up against walls. You got to think you can figure out a better way, only to find out that maybe you can't. But That is instilled in the DNA of our organization. Like when someone says you can't do it that way, when the data suggests like that product won't work, when someone tells you, you know, you can't afford to build that grow, or you can't partner with that person, or they're never going to want to work with you, or you're never going to be able to, this is my favorite, you'll never be able to sell weed for that much money in this state. Well, we've proven that
Yeah.
false in all three of the states we've operated in. And I'm not bragging about having the highest dollar thing. I'm like, when you put in a certain level of work and effort and passion into making something, and you can and people determine it to be worth the price that you want to charge, and that happens to be higher than what the next guy does, it to me that means we worked harder, we did something else. So yeah, I forget. I got off track,
No,
lost thought of what you were saying, but
it's getting into cultivation, and you explain that,
yeah,
and that's the funny thing about that. When you say you'll never be able to sell weed for that price, people seem to forget that every other fucking industry on the planet exists, right? I'm sure someone told Louis Vuitton you're never going to be able to sell a piece of leather for 10 grand. People in the wine industry, people anywhere else, like, are you going to be able to sell weed at $60, $80 an eighth to someone as their daily driver who, doesn't make that much money? Probably not. Will they buy it for their birthday? Most likely, right? If you have someone, it's different strokes for different folks, right? Like we pretend like, does everybody always drink Pappy Van Winkle every time they want to pour a bourbon? Absolutely not. But they certainly want it. They're certainly going to buy it, and they're certainly going to spend the money on it, right? Like, and the one thing that I love about what you've done when you say, going back, nobody can sell weed at that price, you're not only selling it at that price. You're like, hey guys, it's like the Jim Beam family of brands, even though it's all Alien Labs and Connected. It's like, we've got our top shelf shit. That's the best stuff. It's the highest quality you're going to get. We got B-sides and we got smalls. So you can try our weed. It's just what level you're going to come in at. And I think that's great because you're not just ultra premium exclusive. And I think that's why so many people love you.
yeah, and it allows you, like, you build the foundation on the premium, on what draws the interest and excitement to your company, and as you said, and then you start to branch off, and you offer different tastes of what started the whole thing, our genetics, into different product categories. And that's why our vapes have been so successful. Like, some people just like vaping as a mechanism to get high over flower, but also a ton of, we track how the sales work, and a lot of people buy a premium eighth and then get one of our less expensive vape carts, and they work with each other. Like you said about the Pappy Van Winkle, like that's the same thing in my life, right? Regardless of what I can afford, I'm never buying the most expensive version of anything every time.
Yeah.
Like, you treat yourself, you do something, and you do something that feels good, and sometimes it feels good to like make something that is expensive or high quality last, right? You're like saving a little bit of it, and then
Yeah.
you save up for the next thing. It's like every day can be a celebration of some sorts. It determines, how you want to live your life, how you want to spend your money. You can't take this money with you. So I've always taken the approach, like, I'm responsible and whatnot, but I like nice things, right?
Yeah.
So I like being able to create a nice thing that someone else can enjoy.
I agree. I have a nice blunt of bad apple rolled up right here for after this conversation. Because that is the only thing that truly have had in stock. I really
Let me
wanted.
ask you a question. What kind of blunts you roll? What is that?
Oh, I think you know these boys, Brothers Broadleaf.
Man, isn't that a good product?
The best. The barrel series right here. So
Dude.
I got hit. I talked to Ted about them. I got hit. I want. So when I started going out to California, someone gave me a Packwoods and like a lot of those hemp wrap pre rolls. I was a cigar smoker before. I didn't. I'm late to the game. I really didn't start smoking weed regularly until I was like 22, 23,
Uh-huh.
right? And like you said, you grew up, you thought you were going to have to be an adult. I remember thinking like, shit, I really missed the boat on this because I'm going to have to give it up soon. And then I went on a President's Club trip for the tech company I work for. One of the execs invited me to his room to smoke, and every single person in the CC, they're smoking weed. And I'm like, oh, wait, you guys are all really successful and you smoke weed? They're like, yeah. I go, oh, cool. I don't have to quit soon. So, um, so I was a big cigar smoker, cigar and whiskey. So when I got over to weed, I really stopped with the cigars because I'm like, I had a friend who said his rule was if it doesn't get me high, I don't smoke it. But, you know, I was smoking weed every day and I didn't need that added stress on my lungs. I think it was a targeted ad. And when I found out they were real cigars that you would use for blunts, I hit them up immediately. I had them on the podcast. I went over to see them in Tampa. They are two of the coolest, nicest kids I had ever met in my life, too. I absolutely love the product, and anything I can do to help them, I absolutely do.
Yeah, man, I'm still to this day, like I really care about my health and all that. And I know maybe smoking blunts or tobacco is not the best thing, but like I work really hard in the gym and I eat all this good stuff to make sure I can still afford myself that little slice of heaven. I just love a good fucking blunt, man. And I know some of the purists out there like, no, it's gotta be a doink and it's gotta be in an element paper and it's gotta be this. I'm like, hey, like I don't knock you for that, but dude, nothing for me still to this day. Nightshade in a blunt. We actually have a new strain that seems just goes so well. I smoke a lot of backwoods because the brothers broadleaf, they're not as easy to get around here, and
No.
Ted kicks me down from time to time. I need to just get them
They'll
faster.
send them to you. I'll text them after the show.
I would appreciate it because I really like those.
They're
I
gonna
still
sponsor. So
I
they
still fucking smoke. I still love my backwoods. We got a new strain coming out, Dosi and Banana. It's Dosi Lotto crossed with the Banana OG, and it is just like pure like banana runs, like not runs the strain, like the banana runs candy. It's like exactly
oh
that flavor. And then with a regular or a sweet blunt, like that. Oh, I just smoked some last night with my wife. We actually went out to a celebratory dinner last night to celebrate me getting off house arrest, and my office manager had sent a note when she made the reservation, to put on the menu like free tiny, Tiny Tim is free. And then the chef who I kind of know, he's like, fuck the police. So I got there and my menu was all free Tiny Tim. Fuck the
that's
police.
hilarious,
It
dude.
was hilarious, but we smoked that before. Yeah, man, a blunt is like, it's just, it's an
I'm back on them.
indulgence that cannot be matched.
I went to go see him in Tampa, and they gave me a bag of like 85 of them between the individually wrapped, the barrel series, the packs of duds, and everything else. And I started giving out, dude. I was on the plane at MJ Biz, and I was talking to some guy while I'm waiting to get off the plane. I'm like, "You smoke blunts?" He goes, "Yeah." I reach in my bag, hand him like three of them. I'm like, "Here, you're gonna love these." Have you tried the barrel series yet? The whiskey ones?
No, I haven't.
So they age these in a spent whiskey barrel. So it infuses the flavor of whiskey into them. And then at what you do, they call it marinating. They figured this out. After you roll it, you put it back in this bag, and the weed itself will also the leaf will absorb more, but the weed will absorb the whiskey flavor as well too. And it's like the only way you can get a flavored wrapper from them. But you pair it
Wow.
with a nice bourbon or a whiskey, it is very nice.
You drink, I am taking you're a whiskey drinker. You drink Japanese whiskey ever?
I have just started dabbling in Japanese whiskey. I was very patriotic for a long time. This is our shit. And then I had some Japanese whiskey. I'm like, okay, I can expand my horizons here.
Yeah, it's pretty good. You got to try some out. Hibiki Harmony is one of my favorite ones, and it's actually one of the reasonably priced ones. So
Okay.
check it out. It pairs exceptionally well with the blonde.
I do a whiskey and a blunt. Like, I don't drink that much anymore, but there is just something about a whiskey and a blunt that is just very, very nice. Like, and when you have quality weed, you have the quality blunt wrap and a quality whiskey. Like, that's a night. That is a beautiful night to relax and enjoy yourself.
We got this dude out here that we've been working with for a long time. His name's Wilson. He runs a company. He calls himself Ganja Rio on online, and he I believe he used to have a job rolling. He's a Cuban dude, and he used to have a job rolling cigars in a cigar factory. Either that or one of his family members. And so we've been working with him. God, it's like probably going back like 2013, 14, something like that. And, we used to give him, because you couldn't sell tobacco and weed
Yeah.
together, obviously, but you'd give this guy a bunch of weed, and like 6 weeks later he'd come back with these, and he imported Cuban leaf tobacco,
Oh,
and he
wow.
would roll them, and they're exactly like a cigar. Like they're hard, like they look exactly like the cigar. They got the cedar, the thin piece of cedar and the thing, and that is like an insanely enjoyable experience. But so I had to clean out my house, and I've always been a fan of those things. And I found some that were from the Nightshade release, which I think was in 2019. We gave him a few pounds of Nightshade, and he rolled them up, and I had misplaced them. Or I had like a little humidor, and they were like in the back. So I just smoked a 3-year-old or 4-year-old aged, sort of like the weed was brown, like you could
Yeah.
see it on the thing. It was the smoothest, best smoking experience that I can ever remember. I sat there, and these big long things, and I sat there and I smoked the whole fucking thing. And I think the THC, I think the curing and whatever had happened, so I wasn't like insanely high. Normally I'm not going to smoke.
Yeah.
They're like 3.5 grams, but it was just like, I mean, there was nothing on the inhale, just pure pleasure. The tobacco had like really imparted itself on the weed, and it was insane. And I'm like, is there something to aged weed like that? Like is it
I feel,
worth doing something and trying to figure out like a project?
I
And
feel like
I
there
mean,
has
like
to be.
this is a 2021 vintage of Nightshade that we've had stored in this climate controlled humidor, for whatever. It's interesting. We want to start fucking with it.
There's got to be something to aging weed. There's something to aging alcohol. There's something to aging meat. There's something to aging, like there's got to be something to aging weed too. I don't know why. Just anything that I enjoy seems to be better with age. So I feel like you've got something there, man. I love the way that your brains work though. Like you saw that and you're like, how do I replicate this now for commercial use? And the thing that sucks is that you can't combine tobacco. I know we're getting towards the end here. There is so much to talk to you about. Like you guys have done so much. One of the things I wanted to get into, I don't even know if we have enough time, is I learned, and I thought I was pretty educated on the industry, that you guys were the original licensees of cookies. That at one point in time, that you actually, then this was the Elliot interview that I learned it on, that you guys created Biscotti. You had Burner name it and promote it as if he did because it was going to bring more attention to it. At what point, and we don't have to go through the whole cookies thing, at what point did you think like, hey, if I really want to do this, I can't be cookies anymore. I've gotta come up with my own thing because connected is there. Like it wasn't even like you did your own thing, you didn't do as well. You guys are all over the place with 4 markets now.
So it happened like, and look, like I don't have any regrets of how things went down or whatever, but look, we were both, when I say we, Burner and us, we were both making a ton of money. But he kept asking for more and kind of doing less. And then when he started the competing brand with Ivan that never really went anywhere, Exotics, I was like, a light bulb really went off. I'm like, look, like I can't harm him. Like he can do that. He's not precluded from doing that in the contracts, but I'm like, we're paying him all this money, we're blowing up his brand. I mean, he's also a master marketer himself,
Great.
right?
Yeah.
It's no disrespect to Burner. He did his thing and he was doing his thing. And we're blowing up his brand. Like we're putting in all the hard work. We're making really good money. It's very successful for us. But at the end of the day, if and when this relationship ends, and there was no real discussions about conjoining, the teams and us being a part of Cookies. So really we were just like, a vendor to him that at some point what would we have had left if we didn't start something? And my partners are the ones who met Burner and really worked with them and developed that idea and that relationship. And I just was, working the grow and working the stuff behind the scenes and helping to, build on the corporate side, or like building the company on the back end, like new partnerships and whatnot, getting facilities. And I went to them, I'm like, guys, like I know this has been insanely profitable and like really beneficial for both, but like, dude, this thing's like, you got to see where this is going. And one day he's gonna find a bigger partner, a different partner, and the contract's up. And what do we have? We got to start our own thing. And I remember like online, I've always like, like type into Google like synonyms of this name and that. And
Been
I was
there.
just like thinking and thinking, and I was like, the name just came to me. I actually saw a T-shirt that I thought said Connected, and it said something else. But that was enough. I was like Connected, and I did all the Google searches. But Connected, how is Connected not a name? Like that's
Dude.
the fucking. It means so much. By itself, just in business, it
Yeah,
means so
yeah,
much. But then in the weed business, in the drug business, like in the us business, like what we do and how we've done everything, like you're connected, like you've got it, like it was fucking perfect. And so we started it. I convinced my partners, like we start our own thing. We've got a year and a half or 2 years left on the contract with Burner. Let's use the rest of the time. We're still gonna, promote the strains as cookie strains. We're going to let everyone know that Connected is the company, the group, the people, the passion, the fucking individuals that have been putting all this weed in these cookies packages, because it doesn't fall out of the sky. And right, and growing back then was way harder. We were way limited on the shit that we had, and the equipment that you could use, and there was no such thing as weed permits. And like we were taking all the risk on that side, and we were making money, like, but you got to walk away with something, and that's how I was born.
I love the story that you tell when he came up with the name Biscotti, and you're like, what a terrible name. It's a dry fucking cookie. Why would you name something weed related a dry cookie? But it worked. I was laughing my ass off listening to that,
I
dude.
was mind blown. I'm like, I mean, it sounds good, but I'm like, that weed smells so fucking good and looks so good, and you're gonna call it this dry, flavorless cookie? And no disrespect to the biscotti, it has amazing, and it's got its place and
Yeah, you
in
dip it in
Italian
coffee.
culture, and it does its thing. You dip it in the coffee, but it's not my thing, And yeah, the fact that it blew up and it worked, and it's the most mentioned cannabis strain name in music, period. It has over 400 mentions in songs since we took it to market in 2016 or 17, I forget. And that says enough right there. And I'm guessing that's part of the reason. Like it's rappable, right? Like
Yeah.
Biscotti, I guess, rhymes. It fits with a bunch of things, and we had ourselves a hit. So I'm proud of the work we did with him, and we wouldn't be here without the shit he did. And I think he's in a different place than he might have been had we not worked together. So I think we could look back on it and be like, that was good shit.
I love it because I think both of you guys have transcended cannabis itself. Like I look at the merch that both you and Ted put out, the Alien Labs, the connected stuff. And when we were doing Heisman, we looked at cookies to help people understand the comparison of what we were doing, where it wasn't what we do from the merch standpoint is not overtly weedy, but it's part of the brand, it's part of the lifestyle, and it's very much if you know, like I find myself, and I'm not just saying this because you're on the phone here. I've seen cookie stuff all over the place. Like it's cool and everything else. It's not my style. Like I go on your website, I would buy probably 12 of the 15 shirts that are for sale and everything else. Like they're just really nice. And first, I don't know if it's just like I'm a middle-aged professional now, and I just the palm trees. I live in Florida, so I love it. But I think you guys have done what Burner has done for an additional community that's not maybe not hip hop centric or anything else, but just generally love weed and want to be part of that community.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we've got to do. We actually we got sued by another connected apparel company that makes women's dresses for Walmart, and they don't want us using the. So we're like working through that right now. But yeah, I'm hoping we're gonna continue to launch products into the market. I think it resonates. It's a little bit of an elevated look and feel. Like it's
Yeah.
not as in your face, or as some of the other cannabis stuff that's out there. And that's the kind of brand we want to be: elevated look,
I don't
feel,
have to think about what am
approachable.
I wearing when I go pick up my kid from school. Like Ted and I had this conversation. Like we're all out and about and proud of what we do and smoking and everything else. But I think he said it best where it's I don't want my decisions to affect the way that my kid people look at and treat my kids. Like because I'm in the weed game or I smoke weed or anything else, I don't want people to make assumptions about me or my child because of that. Like me, that's fine. But for my kid, I don't want that. So I love because the thing is like if I'm out there and I'm wearing the heady shit, like they're definitely gonna make some assumptions about me. Am I happy about that? Do I feel good about that? I look at that scenario that way? Probably not. Maybe I should be more proud, but like I have a family that didn't make the same decisions I did. Having said that, if I wear a normal shirt and then someone talks to me like, what do you do for a living? The conversation is completely different. I actually joke now where it's like I tell people, hey, I have a podcast. I don't have an hour to talk to you about this. But that's why I appreciate what you guys have done, where it allows me to have those conversations, but it's not overtly in people's faces. And I love the fact that you guys are here in Florida now. I really do. I told Ted, I now have quality weed within driving distance of my house because I don't have a Jungle Boys near me. I don't have a Flowery near me, but there's a True Leaf down the street. And you guys are putting out quality through True Leaf. The smalls you can is the best deal in Florida cannabis by far. But you're just quality, literally driving distance for me, and I love it.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the support. It was great meeting you in Chicago, and I appreciate you having me on today. Um, it was great talking with you.
Absolutely, man. Before I let you go, I would definitely love to have you back. Would definitely love to do this in person sometime. Um, Promotion, Instagram, where people can find you. Connected is California, Arizona, Florida, and Michigan.
That's it.
Oh,
Nope,
just those three.
it's just California, Arizona, and Florida right now. We're working on a deal to potentially be in 7 other states. So hopefully 2024 is a big year for us. At connected.california is our Instagram. Yeah, come check us out, and we hope to be at a dispensary near you guys soon.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you to Caleb, and thank you to everybody who's watching. We'll see you next time.